Jobsworth, Season 3, Episode 12, Off Script. Welcome to episode 12 of Jobsworth Season 3. This week, I catch up with actor Sam Strike. Sam and I spoke over a video call a couple of months ago now. I was sat in my office not far from where Sam was born in Southend-on-Sea, and he was sat in his home on Long Island, New York. In this episode, we discussed the events that led him there, kicking things off with what it was like growing up in Essex, why Sam got into acting in the first place, and how it felt landing his first role as a key character in EastEnders at the age of 19. We talk about overcoming rejection, developing resilience, the highs and lows of life as a professional actor, and what it's like to see projects you're attached to fail. We also explore the power of saying no to certain opportunities in order to achieve your long-term goals. And if you happen to like director David Fincher, there's a great anecdote about him thrown in for good measure too. Sam has already had a successful career by anyone's standards. He starred in multiple roles in film and TV. His portrayal of Roger Morris in 2023's The Boys in the Boat is outstanding, but at just 30 years of age, he's got a long way to go and a lot more he wants to achieve. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to the super talented Sam Strike. The opening question is always, when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So once I got into secondary school, that was the first time we did like drama classes. We didn't have it in primary school. And at the end of my first drama lesson, my teacher took me to one side and was like, you've got an aptitude for this. And I think it was the first time I'd been told by a teacher I was good at something.
Right.
Which at however old I was, 11, 12, however old you are in year 7, to hear that for the first time, I was like, oh, that's really cool. But it never really seemed like a realistic thing to do. I guess if you would have asked me growing up, the first time I thought, oh, that might be cool. Yeah, it was acting.
Nice. Yeah, I speak to a lot of people, it's the stereotype, particularly guys that growing up, especially in Essex, that had aspirations of becoming a footballer. When they were a lot younger. And then I've spoken to a couple of actors as well that kind of knew, or at least had a sense they enjoyed it. And then once you get told, actually, you've got a talent here, that starts to bring on the next level, or the next level of pursuit for you. So that's nice. Where did you go to school, Sam?
I went to Fort Paul.
Okay,
yeah.
Got you. And did you have a particularly good relationship with your drama teacher at the time? Was it, because I guess I tend to ask that question to then get a sense of whether it's connected with what you did. Obviously, it very clearly is. But did you have a good relationship with the teachers around you that were sort of telling you, yeah, do you know what, this could be a route to explore?
Well, that was my first ever drama lesson. Wow. It was first week of school kind of thing. So I didn't know her, but going forward, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And I still speak to her,
Really?
The film I did, Boys in the Boat, when it came out in England, my mum wanted to go and see it with a bunch of people, and she was there. And without getting too sentimental or soundbitey, it was really I've been really lucky to experience some really cool stuff in my life as a result of my career. And it's if she hadn't taken me aside that day and been pursue this, I absolutely would have a completely different life. 100%. I'd never have met my wife, all the places I've been lucky to travel. And it's it was really all down to this one person,
That's so cool. I've described it a couple of times this season as your sliding doors moment. If that hadn't have happened, if you'd gone off in a different route, there's kind of these convergent paths that sort of spark off from there, isn't there? So Have you got any idea what you would have done, Sam, if drama hadn't been signposted as something that you were good at? Did you ever think about what you might have done if this wasn't the route you'd explored?
I always had I really enjoyed English at school, both in primary and secondary school, and I always did quite well. And my mum is a family lawyer.
Okay.
And that always interested me. I don't know, I think it's a really tough job. It's really difficult. But I think there is a creative element to it, because you're finding solutions, and my dad was a editor for more reality TV. Okay. He was a freelance editor. And I found as an adult, I have an aptitude for all that stuff, and I really enjoy it. So I'd like to think I would have gone into something creative still. As you said, you come from Essex. sometimes if you don't have the right mindset, can feel like there isn't like a wealth of options available to you and what you can do. Honestly, I don't know, man, because I was kind of listless. Like in my later teenage years before I started working as an actor, I was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do.
It's such a shared experience that most people going through that kind of age, the mid-teens into late teens, I think the majority of people are looking for what they're supposed to do. They're either waiting for a sign or trying to go through, like, kiss a load of frogs and find out something they feel at least.
Yeah.
Like, passion's an overused word, isn't it? But something that they want to enjoy or they're at least engaged by. I know that was my experience. How old are you, Sam?
30.
30, yeah. So I'm 38 now. And my experience of careers advice was always, I got to college and they said, it's banking, go up to the city, get a job in finance, get a job in an office in a corporate world. And that's pretty much all you had a trade. So you'd go and start getting certificates in that way too. So I think it's great that someone in your life just gave you that little bit of, not even validation, but they just identified something in you that led you down this path, which is obviously, that's kind of...
I think it is a bit of validation, because even now I'm like, I'll embark on something creative and be like, this sucks, this is terrible. And it just takes like one person going like, oh, this is really good. And you're like, oh, it is really good, isn't it? Like it does. Where did you go to college?
So I went to CVIC. For college, yeah.
I did that too. And then I went to SEEK or SEC now. And I didn't last long at either.
I was pretty academic at secondary school. Did really well at GCSEs, like A's and B's across the board. And I got into, I think most people got into CVIC. I went to CVIC with these A-levels that I thought were just a good way to go. And I absolutely flunked it all because, first off, I didn't have the discipline to turn up to classes. So all of a sudden you go from a very regimented, structured environment at secondary school and then jump into this world where they're going, come to classes, don't come to classes. Yeah. It's up to you. Well, I was always going to take the path of least resistance and not go to class. So my experience at college was very different. And that's where I started falling out of that track of thinking, what did I want to do when I grew up?
What did you study at CVIC?
Literature, history, graphic design. They were my 3 A-level subjects that I ended up doing. At AS level, I ended up doing French. But I realised that I'd spent the best part of 2 years just copying my mate at GCSE French. And I don't know how I passed, because walking into a French class where the French teacher would not speak English, I was just like, this is an alien language. I've made a big mistake. So that didn't last very long. Right. But what about you? What did you go to college and study?
I went to CVIC and I did English language and literature, film, sociology. I feel like I started with 4 and then you drop one, but I can't remember what the 4th one was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did that and I was there for a couple of months and I actually started getting auditions at the time. Okay. And the college were kind of like, either like come and do the courses or like go on your auditions. Like you can't do both. So I said, oh, okay. And I left and I went to, it was SEEK at the time in South End High Street. And I just did a BTEC in drama. There was like various ones. I can't remember which one it was. Yeah. But I very quickly ran into the same problem, Like I think I had like a Hollyoaks audition and I like did the audition in London. And then the way it used to work with Hollyoaks was you'd go an audition in London and then if you were like into the next round, you and a bunch of guys would all get the train up to Liverpool.
Right.
And like all the prospective actors. I did the audition in London and I knew I had to go to Liverpool, not the next day, but the day after. And I said to the college I wasn't coming in and they were like, either kind of go to the audition. And it was like kind of unofficially like, don't come back if you go to the audition. And I was like,
that was your ultimatum.
I was like, I can either like keep going to college with the hope of I'll get auditions and become a working actor, or I can go to this audition and pursue trying to become a working actor. And I had friends that had been through a similar thing. And I was just like, I'm just going to go for this audition. I didn't get it, but it was definitely like an all-in kind of moment.
Was that kind of your stepping off moment where you think, again, it's another sliding doors type moment where you have to make a decision? You either, as you say, that's the opportunity you're faced with there, and you have to step off and really dive in with both feet at that stage, don't you too? Because you're turning your back on education at that point. What did your family think of it too? Like, what were your parents saying at the time?
I don't remember, to be honest. Like, I think I didn't really want to go to college anyway.
Okay.
It just felt like that was what you did. So it was kind of my get out of jail free card for myself. Like, well, I've been given this ultimatum and there is another viable option, so I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
But that, they were always supportive. I think, like, I don't know if it would have gone on for longer or I hadn't like found any work or hadn't started getting any traction, maybe they would have been like, what are you doing?
It's the balance, isn't it? It's the balance between having supportive parents and then they have to be realistic at a stage and give you advice that is going to set you up in a good way, which is, okay, look, you've been trying this for a while. Let's maybe take foot off the gas.
But they were also very like, they let me be independent kind of thing. Not in a way if they didn't care, but they were like, well, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like trying to like push me into like doing anything in particular. And I think also, like, even though I wasn't getting any work, I was always getting traction. I was always like coming down to the final three. I guess that gave it some sort of legitimacy as an actual option.
Yeah.
Going on auditions and like getting close but not getting the job.
I think that's a really good point to make, because I speak to a lot of people where their parents have maybe stepped in and said, no, this isn't a route. Not as strongly as, we're not going to support you if you choose to do this, but they're going to suggest other alternatives to try and give you some ideas, some other outlets that you could try and explore. But I think having parents that allow that freedom of expression, give you some room, some bandwidth to go and explore something, obviously, I mean, it's all panned out well.
Yeah, and I think, and all credit to them, like, so I grew up in South Church, right by Southend East Station.
Yeah.
And my catchment school was Thorpe Bay at the time. I don't know what it is now. And, like, the school had a bit of a reputation at the time. And putting me through Thorpe Hall, which is like a private school, like, was not easy for them.
Right.
And I think considering that they'd both sacrificed a lot to put me into this like good school, they were worried about me going to the other school because I was like quite a sensitive kid, and I think they thought I was just going to get eaten alive.
Right.
And but considering they'd sacrificed all this to put me through like this very academic education, for me to turn around at the end of it and go like, yeah, I'm going to try and do that thing where like at 99% of any given time you're unemployed. So like credit to them for being like, if that's what you want to do,
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Did either of them come from that kind of, that world, that background? It sounds like your dad had sort of a foot in that entertainment space at the very least.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's like, it's completely unconnected. I think the only benefit I got from it is like, I remember being like 3, my dad always had a video camera out just for himself. He just loved recording things and family stuff and taking pictures. So I was like used to having a camera in my face, I suppose. But like none of, like I say, my dad, he'd work on stuff like MasterChef, things like that. And he was a freelance editor for most of my childhood. It was never sort of what I do, like scripted narrative.
Of course. Yeah.
Kind of stuff. And it's funny, we'll have like arguments. And even when I was younger and I started working, we'd have arguments because he was coming from one world where things are done a certain way and I was coming from another.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like he worked for the BBC and at one point I worked for the BBC, and he's got both of our, you get like a photo taken and like an ID card when you work, and he's got both of our BBC name cards in his kitchen, which is nice.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really nice. So you started on this sort of acting trajectory in year 7. I love hearing people that live in the US say year 7, because when you talk about grades and stuff out in the US, I just get completely lost. They do not equate to an age whatsoever. So like 11 years old, 11, 12 years old, you start this acting trajectory. When did it start to become a viable path in terms of you start to get auditions, you start to get jobs, you start to feel like it turning into something where, you're getting paid work out of it?
There was an agent in Leon C. It was like a theatrical school, but also had an agency, and it was called Sandra Singers. It's still there.
Yeah.
And my sister wanted to audition for like the dance school.
Okay.
And I went with her, and I looked like Justin Bieber at the time, like very like commercial looking.
Yeah.
And this agent comes up to me and she's like, "Have you ever thought about acting?" And I was like, I had, but it just, I was like 17 at the time and kind of like running around South Church Park getting into trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she goes, "Look, if you come to adult drama class on a Thursday. I'll put you on my books as like a client. I'll send you out on auditions. So I was really lucky. And I seldom went to the drama class. Probably like yourself with college. I was just like, I don't want to do this on Thursday. But yeah, I started going out on auditions, and I auditioned for a good like 2.5 years before I got my first job. And when I did get my first job, I had said to myself, I'm like, this is the last thing I go out on. This is the last thing I audition for.
How serious were you about that? I hear a lot of similar sounding stories from people that kind of it all hinged on that last audition or that last decision they were waiting on, and they were very much ready to throw in the towel. So looking back at it, how serious do you remember being at 19? Like, I'm done.
So I was like, I was getting like 3 auditions a year. And maybe I'm getting the time frames wrong, but I was 18 when this happened. So maybe I was like 16 when I met this agent. Okay. But there was this kids TV show that I was aware of called Am I High? And it's like a spy show. I got asked to self-tape, which was unheard of at the time, which you record your own audition. It's like commonplace now, that's all you do. But back then it was really
post-COVID, the whole self-tape thing became more of a... more commonplace.
Especially post-COVID, but even before then, like if I'm in England and it's an American thing and they want you to tape, like it became more of a thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it was a self-tape because they were casting it in Scotland, and I did the tape, and then my agent called me and was like, they want you to go to Edinburgh to do this final audition. And I was like, I had no money at all, and it was like really expensive to get the train to Edinburgh. And I'm like, all right, last hurrah, I'll get myself up to Edinburgh and do this final audition. And it was me and one other guy who looked really similarly to me, but he was a little bit younger than I was, and I think I got it because of like labor laws, where I was like 18 at the time, and it was like, we can work this guy and there's no problems. This other kid's only 17. It's going to make our shooting schedule really difficult.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
But it was awesome. And
what was the reality like? Because you've got this expectation of what your first sort of paid job at that level would feel like. I know we're taking you back 12 or so years now, Sam, but what was it like in reality? Did it live up to the expectations that you'd had?
I was so lucky because it was one of the leads of the show, and I can't remember how many episodes it was in a season, but I got to do like fight sequences, green screen, like all of this stuff that is not like typical to do on your first job. The responsibility of like being a main character across a number of episodes. Yeah. Which is like, it's crazy to me that was the first thing I got to do. And I remember I was like really delusional, and I came out of the first season like, I'm like working now, this is going to be easy. And then I didn't work for like a year.
Right.
Until the second season. Yeah. And I mean, I snuck in one little job right before I started the second season, which was more grown up. It was like a Comedy Central thing. And so it's like, I got to have all this fun doing fight sequences and all this kind of stuff on this kids show. But then I got to go and do this Comedy Central thing where I was like, but this is actual grown up stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's nice as well that you could, as you say, fortunate / potentially a little bit of luck there as well, that you land something where you do get that opportunity to go and have those experiences. Yeah. But it sounds great. So I'm going to talk to you about EastEnders now, Sam, because I'm assuming if it's like not working for a year or so off the back of Am I High, and then was EastEnders your next job?
Well, so I did that first season of Am I High. I thought this is going to be easy now. I'm going to be a working actor. It didn't really work. Did the second season of Am I High, came off of it, and was like, remember what this was like last time? It weren't easy. Right. And my first audition after that was EastEnders. And I was like, just do this for free. Like, you're not going to get it. And the character was one way on the page. And I myself, like a lot of other actors my age at the time, was just obsessed with Tom Hardy. I was like, I'm going to go in and do a Tom Hardy impression. It's not what they're asking for, but that's what I feel like doing. Yeah. And I went in and I read it once. And the casting director was like, you need to think about whether you are interested in this, because, she kind of said in the room, like, you're going to be a contender for this.
Like the buying signals, the buying signs are there, aren't they, when they're asking questions like that, for sure.
Which doesn't happen like often. And I did it. And then I got called back the next week to meet with the exec producer. Dom Treadwell Collins, who had just taken over the show,
Right.
and was really passionate about it, and a really smart guy. They go, you're going to have a sister, like this character has a sister in the show, so we want you to chemistry read with some girls to play the sister. And I read with 3 girls, and on the page they kind of wanted like that sort of Camden rocker type for the sister, and I read with 3 girls that were very much like that. And then the last girl they saw was Maddie Hill, and she wasn't that. She was more kind of like, she had more kind of like a street thing going on, and we read and we just clicked. And in the audition scene, the characters are painting the Queen Vic, and I get on the train, I'm on my way home, and I'm reading the Metro, and then it's like Danny Dyer and Kelly Bright to join EastEnders as new owners of the Queen Vic, and I'm like, oh shit, like I wonder if we were auditioning to play their kids.
Wow.
And I texted the girl that I just read with to play my sister because we hit it off.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I think we just auditioned to play like Danny Dyer and Kelly Bright's kids. And then as soon as I sent the text, my phone rang. My agent was like, "You've been offered the role."
Wow.
And for me at the time, coming from Southend, I was younger, and it was to play like a gay character on a big TV show. And now maybe people wouldn't even give it a second thought, but back then it was like it didn't bother me at all, but it was a question people were asking.
Yeah.
And I remember like I got off the train at Southend and I was meeting my friend at the Odeon, and I was like, look man, I just got like, offered a part in EastEnders to play a gay character, and Danny Dyer is going to play my dad. And he was like, you know, and
What a world. Yeah.
I said I wanted to do it. But there's also the stigma around EastEnders where, like, at the time, it was like the last thing you'd ever do in your career in terms of you'd do it and then, like, you were done after that.
This is what I'm going to ask you about, because obviously there are some long-serving actors on that programme, decades and decades. Aren't they about, I think they're about to celebrate their 40th anniversary as well, EastEnders. Yeah. Like, it's been going for a long time, and there are some, like, EastEnders lifers that have been on it. I was going to ask, like, once you get a job like that, yes, the considerations about the character are a huge part, and definitely around that time, I'd like to think the world has progressed a lot now, so maybe the same considerations for people getting cast at 18, 19 years old, it wouldn't be such a big hurdle to potentially overcome. But definitely, like, when you're auditioning for EastEnders, is that, at the time, is that your idea of, like, success? Was there a part of you that thought, I've made it? Like, that is...
No? It's funny. Like, I went through all of the, like, costume fittings and the makeup, and met Danny and Kelly, and, like, we were all set to go. But I really felt that, like, this could be the last thing I do.
Okay.
Like, because it was a lot of the time. And I remember, like, trying to call my agent at, like, 2 a.m. the night before I was due to start. And I was like, I don't want to do it.
Wow.
Like, panicking. But like it's such a great place to learn because the volume of work is crazy, you know, like you're learning so much dialogue every day, shooting so many scenes a day. And some of the actors that I work with on EastEnders are like the best actors I've ever worked with in my career.
Wow.
Not just technically, I mean, like really talented people. I don't know, like when that stigma was around about EastEnders, I was like, this is so unjust because some of these people are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, I did a year in the end.
Yeah. It's amazing. And what a character to take on, what a storyline to take on. And especially at that time, as we said, like, and then playing Danny Dyer's son, who's like your stereotypical hard man.
Yeah.
And putting yourself through that must have been a great learning experience and a learning curve for you too. Well, how did that come to an end? I'm not a massive EastEnders fan, Sam, so apologies. I don't necessarily know your character arc all the way through, but how did that all come to a close, EastEnders? Was it your choice, their choice?
No, it was me. It was funny. Like, I always kind of knew I wanted to do a year.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that's my best shot at getting out and doing other things.
Not getting... I don't say stuck in a negative way, but not getting stuck there. Like you've got a higher chance, haven't you, of staying if you're over a year or so.
It's great. Like you've got the money's good and it's regular, but I was like young and not particularly smart about things. You get really famous really quickly, and I didn't handle that particularly well. Like I got really anxious, and then I was just on a crazy schedule. Anybody in their right mind would have like moved up to near where the studio is, but I stayed in Southend.
Right.
So I was doing 2.5 hours there and 2.5 hours back, like 6 days a week.
Where is it? Boreham Wood?
Boreham Wood, yeah.
Got you.
And a lot of the time that meant like getting on the train at 5 a.m. and then getting home at like 11, and then you want time to unwind, and then you end up sleeping 3 hours, 4 hours, and that compounds over time.
Yeah.
And my anxiety got really bad. I was actually going up to the woman that played my mum in the show, Kelly. She was getting married in Cornwall, and I was in the car on the way to Cornwall with her. And because I was going to help her set up for a wedding, and my agent called me and was like, your contract's up for renewal. But I knew the boss of the show was going to be at this wedding.
Right.
I was playing him as a young man. He'd based this family on his family, and I was playing, my character was based on him.
Wow.
And I said to my agent, I was like, I'm not going to renew, knowing that I was going to see Dom at the wedding. And, me and Dom had a conversation about it, and he's like, he was really respectful about it, and he understood. And we kind of confirmed when the exit date was going to be and stuff like that. So yeah, it was kind of like, I was like, I did a year, and I was like,
good.
And people were saying like, are you crazy? Like, you're like a working actor, you've got consistent income. I'd never earned that much money in my life, and I probably never would have really. I was like, I always wanted to like give America a go. That was always like the dream. And I was like, I would rather like try and fail horribly than not try and like never know and then end up 50 like, oh man, I wish I would have at least known that I failed. You know what I mean?
There's loads. I'm sure there's a cliche that I could pull out of the air somewhere that is all around that. It's better to have tried and failed than not have tried at all. There you go. I've literally just done it. But it's I mean, there's a lot of times in my life where I feel like I've done the same thing, a very different scale. But yeah, you want to at least know that you've tried it. And like we say, like hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? It's worked for you. It's paid off. Now I know the reality of it is very different as a working actor. It's not you hit a certain level and then it's back-to-back projects all the time, which we'll talk about in a second. If anyone's listening to this and not watching it, Sam is shaking his head vigorously there too. So yeah, it's not as quote easy once you've hit a certain level. No. Talk to me then. America was something you always wanted to do. The aspiration was there. Yeah. When do you make the decision to... Are you out there permanently now, Sam?
I've been out here for like 10 years.
Okay. So yeah, round about that time. So you left EastEnders, and then was that with that conscious decision, I'm going to get out to the States?
No, I came off. I did like a typical British gangster movie.
Okay.
And I'd always wanted to do one, to be honest. And like, I guess I had some value from EastEnders for that kind of like demographic and market. So I did that. And then like nothing. I couldn't get an audition, like it was tough.
Does regret start to sit in slightly there, Sam? Do you start doubting the decision?
It was worry, but it wasn't regret. Maybe I was like, I mean, I know I was like arrogant when I was younger, but I was like, I think if I wanted to go back to EastEnders, I could. Okay. But I wasn't entertaining that as an option. Fine. I couldn't get an audition, and months went by. And then they were casting this like Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And I went in and auditioned for it, and I thought I bombed it. I thought that was my shot. Like, it's an American thing. I bombed this. And a couple of days later, my agent calls me and was like, oh, they want you to go in again. And it was to play the lead character. It was to play like Leatherface. And I was like, okay, cool. And I went in again. Then my agent called me and he said, they're not going to know for a couple of weeks. But then they called me like 2 days later, like, you got it. Oh. And there's this thing where they shoot, at the time, they were shooting a lot of American movies at this studio in Bulgaria. And they'd shoot like The Expendables and like all those kinds of movies there. So it was a really great way for like British actors to get into American films without all of because it's getting a visa for America is hard, man. Right. So it was like a good way to like reach into that. And I filmed that, and the woman that played my mum, Lily Taylor, is this fantastic actress. She unbeknownst to me, called her managers in New York and were like, I'm working with this kid, I think he's really good. And I get like a phone call out of the blue one day. It's like, hi, we're Lily Taylor's managers, and she thinks that we should meet with you. You want to come to New York? So I went to New York and I met with them, and I was like, oh, there's like, now this is legitimate. There's like a team of people out here that want to So I got my visa for the States, my first visa. And again, I got to the States and I didn't work for like maybe a year and a half, coming close, but like never quite doing it. And my managers have always been very supportive, but they were like, maybe think about going back to England and building more there that we can use here. And just as those conversations were happening, like I got my first job out here.
Wow.
So
what take me back then, or take yourself back to that time where you get the call to say that you've landed that lead role in that Leatherface film, because what does that feel like?
it was like a bit of a relief.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And also, like, there is this cliche. It's like, oh, I want to go to America, and to sort of get. I mean, it wasn't a Scorsese film, but to get that again was that little nudge towards like, this is possible. Like, they see it. Some maybe other people will.
The next level of validation, almost. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I need to keep doing this, because each bit is progress. Each bit is that kind of elevation along that path.
Even like technical things, like I'd auditioned for a couple of like American things prior to that, and it's like the accent I found difficult and all that kind of thing. And for some reason with this, it just worked out. Like it all came together.
Look, I'll be really honest with you. I've not seen the film. I've seen clips of it in preparing for this conversation with you, and I'm shit scared of horror films anyway, right? So I remember watching the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was younger and having nightmares for like weeks. And I was looking back for your credits and what you've been in, and there does seem to be, like, I'm not broad brushing or generalizing here, but you've been in some horror stuff. You've been in, I was wondering if before Boys in the Boat there was much stuff that you'd done where you weren't covered in blood at some point. But did you find that you were pigeonholed? I don't know what you went on to do after Leatherface, but did you find there was a danger or a risk of getting pigeonholed in that kind of genre in making those kind of first steps in the States?
No, because I think in EastEnders I think my character in EastEnders was objectively like such a good guy.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do stuff that's darker, like every actor says. And that was my way of doing it. So even if it wasn't horror that I was doing, it was like criminals or villains.
Got you.
And I think the thing is, with horror is like a really universal genre. Like comedy is cultural.
Yeah.
Like the sense of humor in Japan isn't the same as it is in Serbia. You know what I mean? It's cultural. But fear is a universal feeling. So the thing with that is horror films make money, and you don't need a star because the genre in itself makes money. So that's when you get like unknown. You can give unknown actors a shot. Right. And I think that's probably why I did a lot of horror, because the finance people are like, we know this is going to make a certain amount of money just because of the genre. Yep. You find a lot of actors get their start. Like Matthew McConaughey was in some obscure Texas Chainsaw film at the start of his career. There was a few people. Yeah. That they get their start that way, you know.
Yeah. Interesting. I never had that insight before, and it was just I was looking at some of the credits and the bits that you'd been in, and the departure from that character you play in EastEnders to what you then went on to when you start your time out in the States, like the role in Mindhunter, the role in Monster Party. Like these are like dark, complicated characters that you are taking on. And I wonder again, at that point in your career, do you ever use the phrase "I've made it"?
No, because you always feel like no matter how big the job is that you've just come off of, you're like, well, I'm unemployed now. Fine. You know. Okay, but Mindhunter was like that like changed my career, and it was only one episode that I did. Okay. But that was like an amazing thing for me. Yeah. Even to this day, like I'll go onto a set and someone will be like, Mindhunter. Like that's the thing that follows me around.
Talk to me about the process, because I don't want to make this a conversation too much about the process of acting or getting into that mindset of the character, but just because by dint of the characters that you've played, how do you go into something like that, especially when you're playing someone that's existed as well? Like that's an interesting approach.
I don't know, man. I find that like the most dark stuff I do, the sets are normally really light. Okay. You know, it's just like, it's funny. Yeah. Because, you know, if you're running around with a chainsaw covered in blood or whatever, There's like 60 crew members standing around eating sandwiches and smoking cigarettes in between takes, and it's like a light-hearted thing. But Mindhunter was like a really specific experience. That was like a typical, for me, like a typical like Hollywood moment where it was like something out of a book that had happened. Like I was in England visiting family, and I got asked to tape for it, and I taped. And they said, okay, can you send another tape with some notes? So I taped with my friend, who's an actor from Leon C, Thomas Coombs.
I know of Thomas Coombs. He's just finished a run of plays in London as well, hasn't he? Yeah, I follow him on Instagram, so I know of him. Yeah,
Tom's blinding. Tom's like a real talent.
Yeah,
and I did that, and they were like, "It's not going any further." And I said, oh, "Okay." And then like 3 days later, they go, "Okay, here's like 15 pages. Can you tape it in like 2 hours?" So I only learned half of it and I sent it, and my manager's like, they've asked for 15 pages. I'm like, I'm going to do 7 well instead of 15 mediocre.
Yeah.
And I was around my friend's house, and I get the call. It's like, you got Mindhunter. You have to be at Heathrow Airport in 4 hours. They're going to fly you to Pittsburgh, and David Fincher's directing your scene. And to me, like Zodiac, Fight Club, Social Network, like David Fincher is one of the kings of directors. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I get to Pittsburgh, and they go, okay, you need to go for a meeting with him in his office, and the 2 leads of the show, because they want to rehearse the scene. And like I'm buzzing the door, and it's not coming, it's not working. And they gave me his number just in case. I'm like, oh, I've got to be the dickhead that calls him. I call him, I go, hi Sam, I'm outside. And he comes downstairs, and this guy's so intelligent and so talented. And he opens the door, and he's like, "Oh, hey Sam, thanks for coming and doing this." And I'm like, "Shut the fuck up! Like, you kidding me? You know?"
Proper pinch me moment.
Yeah, and I go in and with the leads, Jonathan Groff and Holt McCallany, and they were super, super nice. And we drilled the scene, but as we're doing it, David Fincher's rewriting everything. And we're due to start shooting the next day, and the volume was already a lot, and it was all changing. And he has this aptitude for like, he knows exactly how things should sound. So you're not just having to remember all the new lines, you're remembering how he wants them said, you know? And we ended up spending like 5 or 6 days in a prison cell, me and the 2 other actors, just doing these 2 scenes over and over and over. He's famous for this.
Yes, I've heard, yeah.
Hundreds of takes. And to his credit, like he never lost his temper, like, it's not this tyrannical thing. It's like he just comes, he's like, no, say it like this, and you're like, you can't argue because it's way better than anything you've got. He's like the best actor I've ever met.
Really?
But I was so emotionally like kind of broken by the time it was over that I remember like leaving Pittsburgh and saying to my agents, like, I don't want to audition for like 2 weeks. I just need to like lay in a hole. And then I did Monster Party shortly after, and my agents called me and they're like, you have to do dubbing for Mindhunter. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I'm in the middle of a movie. Just the dubbing's going to break me. It was such an intense experience. But they go, no, you got to go and do it. So I go and do it, and Fincher was there in the room, which was like really, he didn't need to be there. And we did the dubbing, and it was in Warner Brothers, and I lived in West Hollywood, which was a good sort of half hour, 40-minute drive. And I was flat broke. And he goes, how you getting home? And I was like, honestly, man, I'm not sure. And he goes, I'll give you a ride. And he gives me a ride back to West Hollywood, and I'm a real camera nerd, and like I'm into the technical stuff, and he's very, very well educated in that. And I'm asking him all of these questions and his opinions on things, and he drops me off outside where I was living. Oh no, he goes, how come you don't have any money? And I go, I don't know, something will come up. And he drops me off outside the house. And he's like, Sam, I'm like, yeah. And he goes, something will come up. And he like pulls away in his Tesla. And I was like, that whole experience was the most like Hollywood crazy dream, you know. It was, and I was convinced I'd done a horrible job in it. And then it came out and I got offered like a TV series like the next day. It was crazy.
Man, that is mad. Like, I'm putting myself in your shoes, going through, you know, you take these leaps of faith, you are filled with doubt, you're having your resilience tested daily, you know, whether that's auditions and being told no or being told to wait and then the phone not ringing. And then you have a moment like that. It's just solidifying, isn't it? And again, bit of validation. Like, again, it's the next sign that, you know, just stick it out. Something's going to come of it.
Especially coming from someone like him, you know, like I just think like he's so smart and so knows what he's doing. And I'm like, the fact that this guy thinks I could be a part of this is validating. But to your point, like the week before I got the audition for Mindhunter, I was like sitting in my mum's kitchen, like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this is killing me. Like, nothing's happening. And she was like, there's always something around the corner. And I'm like, shut up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, she was so right.
How do you deal with the doubt that comes between jobs? Because you say, like, you know, there are spaces between, aren't they? You're not always going to have your next project lined up. Do you feel like you're any better now than you were a few years back between work and having that self-belief, that confidence?
I think, honestly, like, the way you deal with it is that, like, I'm not qualified to do anything else. So it's kind of like, this is what you do.
What's the fallback?
Like, yeah, that's the thing. There is no fallback. No, this is what you do. And even though I've been doing it for a number of years and I've always made a living out of it and like a good living out of it, I still feel like, is this what I am as can I be like, I'm an actor, you know?
And do you feel like you're there yet?
No. But the weird thing is, like, as I've grown up, I've realized it's not that acting that I love. It's like, I like being on a film set.
Okay.
Like, I just enjoy, like, everyone's jobs I find really interesting. And there's like a camaraderie that is like unlike anything I've ever experienced. Acting is just the way that I'm allowed to be there.
Yeah. It's the enabler for you to be in that environment, to be in that world. Yeah. It's a really great perspective. And again, it'd be really insightful for a lot of people listening to this that see what you've been in, that see the life you're living, that see the credits and the films and the actors you're acting alongside, that someone like yourself is still not comfortable with that label and saying, yeah, this is me, I'm set.
Well, it's funny, like, I don't want to speak for people, so I won't name names, but I've been, like, very fortunate to work with some, like, very famous people. And I always ask them, I'm like, do you even like doing this? And the amount of them that go, it's like, they don't hate it, but it's like, they're not like, I love acting with all of my being, you know? They're just kind of like, yeah, you know? But some people are like, you know, I really do love it. But there's some like heavy hitters that are like, you know,
take it or leave it.
Yeah, it's really, and they mean it too. And it's not in like an ungrateful way or anything. Like, one actor I work with in particular is really famous now, but the fame came later for him. So he's got like a balanced perspective on life. Yeah. And I said, do you like really enjoy this? And he goes, well, you know, like, it's like, I think really like his passion is, you know, it could be like, it's the stuff that he gets to do on a Saturday at home that the money from acting affords him the time to be able to do. That's what I love, you know?
And I think, because this whole podcast is much more about talking to people about their experience with work, and some of the people that enjoy their job the most derive exactly that from it. It enables them to do the stuff outside of work. Yeah. And they can derive love and engagement out of that from their job. They don't necessarily have to love the job itself. They just love what it enables them to do. So I think that's a really important reminder for anyone, whether you're interested in Sam's work or not. I really like that message. I think that's really good. Personal interest perspective, what's the difference between kind of fame, and I'm using air quotes to describe this, but fame in the UK. So you were on like one of the most recognised soaps in the UK when you were on EastEnders, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, you start to get recognised, and there's a process behind that, isn't it? And you're going to be affected in different ways. But what's fame like in the UK, and what's the sort of fame culture in the US? How do they differ? How are you coping with fame? Is that even a label you're comfortable with, or word you're comfortable with?
The only time I've like ever had fame was EastEnders.
Okay,
that's like the only time, and it's acute. And I remember being warned by some of the other cast, like around my age, that had been on the show for a minute. They were like, you'll go to bed the night before your episode comes out, and when it comes out, you won't be able to walk down the street. And it was that. Like, it really, really was that. It was a really like weird thing. And for my friends that I grew up with from Southend, you know, we'd like go down to Lakeside or whatever, and they'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. It was a really strange thing. But I don't really, I'm not famous remotely in the US. Like, even like Boys in the Boat, like a lot of people went and saw it here, but it's like, I don't look the same as I did in the movie, and it's just not dude. I can't remember the exact way they described it to me, but one of the cast on EastEnders said the difference between us and like movie stars, the reason that we're so recognizable is like you go to a supermarket and like you're looking for saffron. It's like this rare ingredient that you rarely ever use. They're movie stars. They're really expensive. You see them once a year. He's like, we're Walker's Crisps. People see us, they know exactly what that is, like immediately. And I'm like, that's so true.
Yeah, what
And
an
I've had
analogy.
other friends that have been on the show that have gone on to have great success, and they're like, I'm still not as famous as I was on EastEnders.
Really, it's such a cultural thing, though, isn't it? EastEnders in the UK, though.
Yeah.
So I get why it runs so deep, and it's been around for so long, and it's so consistent. It's there. The frequency's so high.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're literally in people's living rooms with them a few nights a week, and that I can understand the difference there. One of the things that I think about when you think about acting as a profession is comparison. Are you guilty of comparing your career or the jobs you're taking on with your peers, with other people you see around you, potentially even people that came up at the same time as you? Are you ever looking at people's career and thinking, okay, you're doing all right? Are you guilty of that? And how does that kind of have an effect on you?
Well, I had like a turning point. An actor that I'd worked with, this is a while ago, that I didn't get on particularly well with. I'd been penciled for this like big movie, small part in a big movie. And I found out that I hadn't got it because this other actor had gotten it.
Right.
And I was like, if I take this bitterly now, it's gonna ruin me. And I legitimately, like, I felt myself go, and I said to him, I was like, dude, that's awesome. Like, congratulations. And I meant it. And I think it was a self-preservation thing, but the feeling was real. It was like organic. And now I find that I'm kind of like there'll be actors that I know I'm competing with quite consistently, like the same names that come up. And I've never met any of them, but I feel like if I did, I'll be like, it's really good to meet you, man. Like, I respect them. I'm like, okay, like, that's who I'm up against. And dude, like, you wouldn't believe how often it's like, oh, it's you and this guy. It's between you and this guy.
Really?
All the time. And me and another actor in particular, we've even played the same part in 2 different iterations of the same TV show. Like, really weird stuff.
Right, okay.
But I don't feel like a jealousy or like a why don't I have that, or because it's so random, man. Like, the difference between you getting the role and them getting the role is that, like, you look too much like the kid that bullied them in school, so they're going to go with the other guy. There's so many things that go into it. It's like the ones that you're meant to get, you get, and the ones you don't, you don't. There's so many variables that it's like, I never take it personally, ever.
I think that's a really good skill to have had, and it sounds like it's not one that you've had to develop. I can imagine there are some people out there in your profession that look over the garden fence all the time and thinking, why am I not getting that job? And there is a bit of, I don't know, envy creeps in, and there's a bit of resentment that can creep into. And I guess it's, what is already a very hard world to operate in and make a living in becomes even harder when you've got that lens that you're looking at stuff through. But it sounds like you've never been...
I think the only version of it that I do have is if there's like, I'll see a project that's been announced or coming out, and I'll be like, oh, why didn't I get a shot at that?
Okay.
But again, that can come down to just casting being like, it's just not right for it. It's like, it's not what we have in mind for it. And for all the times that happens, I'll also get auditions where I'm like, why are they sending me this? Like, I'm not right for this at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I am going to get a bit super fan, Sam, and I'm gutted, and I feel like you're about to confirm this for me, and I'll be even more gutted when I hear it from you. Again, preparing for this yesterday, you were cast as Roland in the Dark Tower adaptation. That is, the Dark Tower books are my favourite series of books that I've ever read to this day. Like, I am in love with them. To hear you being cast as Roland, I was like, shit. And then I text your cousin Tom, who's facilitated this introduction, and he said, oh, I think that's gone. I think that's on the back burner now. So is that true? Did that get... This is purely self-serving that I'm asking this question.
We shot it. We shot the pilot.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was really cool, man. I got sent the audition, and my agent were like, you're too old for this. And I was like, nah, I just spent the winter playing Red Dead Redemption, and I really wanted to play a cowboy. And I was like, no, I'm going to go in for this. And I had no business going in for it. I think there's certain things required of being like the lead of a show like that. I was like super out of shape. Like my confidence shouldn't have been as high as it was. And I went in, and then I was going to LA the next day just because I was going back to LA. And I was at Heathrow, and they were like, oh, the showrunner wants to meet you, and he's in LA, off the back of my audition in London. And I went in and I met him. And then I did another tape in LA. And then they go, they want you to fly back to London and screen test with potential love interests. And the way that it works when you're screen testing for television is you sign your contract before you get the part.
Right.
Because the idea behind that is you agree to the terms so that when the studio casts you, the actor doesn't turn around and go, well, I want $1 million per episode because I know you want me.
Understood. Yeah.
But typically you do a screen test and it's a yes or a no, and that's it. And I really wanted this, and I did the screen test, and I didn't hear anything. I think they had a week to tell me before my contract expired. And nothing. And then the day before it was due to expire, they were like, the showrunner wants you in again. The studio can't see it, but the showrunner really believes in you for it, so that he just wants to like workshop a bunch of stuff on camera. Workshop, did it, got the role, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Then began like, I was like probably like, and I'm talking in American metrics, I was like probably like 25 pounds too heavy for it. Okay. And I knew that, you know, like if Captain America had like a giant pot belly, you'd be like, there's something like, yeah, there's just realities, man, you know, and I've never been like a fitness freak or whatever. Yeah. So I like lost lots of weight really quickly. I was taking it really seriously. And we went out to Croatia to film it, and we were there for a while. We did like a month of cowboy camp, me and some of the other cast, which was awesome. And then we shot for like 6 weeks. Wow. And it was kind of this mix of, it was like, I think the 4th book is The Wizard and the Glass, and it follows Roland as like a younger guy, but he's like 14 in it. So they were kind of trying to do this happy medium where he was more like 18, 19, and you see him grow into, because he ends up becoming quite like a rough guy.
Yeah, I mean, like in the books, he's like the first book, The Gunslinger, and this is where I was thinking when you were saying you're too old for it, I was like, wait a minute, where's this start? But yeah, in The Gunslinger, he's like a grizzled veteran cowboy going through this wasteland. But now you're talking about that book that is kind of like him going through the whole process, the rites of passage, those relationships with his family as well, like all of these things are explored in that.
And I know that we were really going to go there. Like, I know the first season was going to be, he's young, he's got his friends around him. It's kind of this fun adventure. But by the end of it, a lot of people were going to have died, and he was going to have become this like very jaded, angry, kind of scary character. And I know in season 2, there were things in the books that were really graphic. Oh, yeah. And I'm asking the showrunner, I'm like, are we going there? He goes, yeah, we're going there. It's going to be... He had the whole thing mapped out. He had like 8 seasons mapped out. He had spin-off shows mapped out. He'd worked really hard on it. It was a really cool experience for me, and definitely the biggest thing I'd done up to date. But we found out, we finished it in like the May, and we found out in the November, I think, that Amazon hadn't picked it up to series. It was a strange experience.
Well, I was going to say, because that's a great example of where resilience has to kick in, isn't it? Because you go through that process, you know, the audition process is one thing, the month of cowboy camp is another, the 6 weeks of filming, the camaraderie you build between cast members, the excitement about this project coming out, like that's got to test you, hasn't it, when you hear a few months down the line that it's not getting picked up.
I mean, you know, there's always that possibility that it's not going to get picked up, but you're like, it's a Stephen King thing, you know, like... It's
the IP is there, isn't it? The strength behind it, you'd expect it, yeah.
You really would have thought it was going to get picked up. And like, candidly, man, too, it's like, financially, it would have been crazy for me, you know? So there was that aspect too, because, you know, I don't come from like extreme wealth. So I'm always worried about money. So it would have been like, wow, there's doors that will open to me if this goes, even if it did 1 season, I'm like, it could change my life forever.
Yeah.
And then you kind of hear the no and you're like, okay, that's gone. Yeah. It's back to square one. You know, it's not like, I think some careers, there's like maybe a linear progression where you're like, I'll work really hard and I'll get promoted, and then that's that salary and I'll get promoted. This was like going from like okay money to really good money where things really would have changed. And that is a reality. Like I knew some people in LA where it's like their parents were paying for their apartment or whatever. So even if they didn't get the job, they knew things were okay. And this was, if I know my life would have changed in a lot of ways. So when you get the call that it's not happening, you do have to dig deep to like not get defeated by it, you know?
Yeah. I can't imagine what that scenario feels like and how I would react to that. But just seeing where you are now and then seeing what you've gone on to do, obviously, yeah, you've got that resilience and it seems like it's something you've got to work on. I think you're a human being at the end of the day, that feeling of building, hyping something up, building something up to then know it's not coming off, and linked to that is security. That's another thing, isn't it? That comes with the money.
It wasn't even like I wanted to be a baller. I was like, I will have security. Like, and if I had a kid, like I know I could, because as an actor, you're always, you know, worrying about where the next paycheck's coming from. And that makes real life stuff really, really hard. Yeah. You're like, how could I bring another life into this world where I'm like, hope I get a job soon. It's like, I don't know, you know, it wasn't that I wanted to be rich. It was just like, it would just be something, one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, understood completely.
It was peace of mind. That's all. That's all it was, you know?
Yeah, no, I get it completely. I was speaking to someone else recently who's a well-known British actor, and he was saying, again, this is the perception outside looking in. He said to me, this job that he had allowed him to get a house.
Yeah.
And you could see in his face that was like such a big achievement that as a professional actor, he had found a job that allowed him to get on the property ladder in the UK. And it really gave me that level of insight, because I never knew that was the kind of benchmark. It's the same as everyone else, isn't it? Like what you want to do, you want to get on the property ladder. But I just thought, given his career to date, he'd be there. And hearing that was just like really, really an eye opener. Yeah. Yeah. Cheers for going into that. It's not supposed to be a therapy session, Sam, but I like to talk about how things test you and how you overcome those too. So yeah, I think that's a really good example. Plus the fact that I'm just a massive fan of those books, and I was gutted, absolutely gutted, that when Tom texted me back and said, yeah, I don't think that came off in the end. Like, who knows? As you get older, it's just it's the more grizzled veteran character that you're going to go and play, Sam. So you're okay. You're still in the frame for it. You're all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nice. All right, we're nearly done. We're on the final stretch now. A couple more questions and then we'll get into the closing tradition. Has your definition of success changed as your career's progressed?
Yeah, and it's probably like it sounds somewhat negative, but I think when you're like 18, 19, 20, and you've got all of that gazump, you're like, I'm going to be a movie star. I want to be a movie star. And then now it's kind of just like, I would just like to earn enough money to like live the life that I want to live. Okay. And to me, that would be success. Yep. You know, like nothing to do with fame, not even the caliber of stuff I did. Like it would be great if it was high caliber stuff, but it's like, it would be nice to earn a living doing something you don't hate doing. And be able to afford the things that you need. Yeah. And that, for me, if I had that, I'd be like, I've made it. That's success.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. No, that's good. I think it's natural, isn't it, for that definition. Even if you think about what success looks like in your early 20s, that definition has to evolve through life experience, through all the things changing around you. And what have you got projects in the pipeline now, Sam? Where do we find you in your career? Are you between work at the minute? Are we in one of those moments where you are sat going, I want the phone to ring?
I absolutely am, man. I mean, it's been a really difficult few years in general for the industry. We had like COVID, which killed things. And then last year we had the strike. Yep. And I was lucky enough to be working as the strike was happening because I'd started on the project. And the way the rules were, they were going to let us finish it. We weren't, you know. So I did that. And then now there's been this sort of complete shutdown. You know, there's very few, the streaming bubble seems to have burst. There's very few things getting made. No one really I think studios don't really know what people want to watch. So they're like reeling back on the studios were like just making stuff.
Yeah.
TV show. And I don't think the model ended up working. So we're definitely in this period. Me and everybody I know, like sort of all levels of success, are like, this is crazy. It's worse than it was in the pandemic.
Really?
And I've had a couple of like, there was one thing that I really liked, a TV show that the subject matter is something I've been a fan of since I was like 3. And I ended up like in a big meeting for that. Like I got right down to the wire and it didn't go my way. That was last month or the month before. But yeah, man, it's just one of those transitionary periods at the moment where you're like, I luckily at the moment can just about afford to like sit this out and not panic, but it's weird out there right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Not that you need me to say this, Sam, but stick it out. Like, if it sounds like you've always had someone in your life that is there saying, like, just, you know, something will come about. So it's not, you know, the gravitas of David Fincher is not there, but stick it out. Something will come about. Right. We are going to get into, I've got a game that we play on the podcast now, and then I've got the closing tradition on the podcast. So the game is this or that. So it's supposed to be 10 questions, but I've got 8 for you. So 8 questions. 8 questions. 2 options, quick fire. You've got to give me one of the options that I ask. So, this or that. Question number 1, New York or Essex?
New York.
Question number 2, action or drama?
Action.
Question number 3, scripted or improv?
Scripted.
Question number 4, horror film or psychological thriller?
Horror.
Question number 5, Carters or the Mitchells?
Carters.
Question number 6 is the offence. I really offended you with that one. Question number 6, studio or location?
Studio.
Okay. Question number 7, Casper or Jackson?
I've played 2 Caspers. I'm going to say Casper.
Oh, nice. Okay. Question number 8, talk or chameleon?
Oh, talk, because I never went to chameleon.
I was wondering if you went to either, to be honest. That was just an absolute punt sticking it in there, but I'm glad one of them at least came up on your radar. So that's cool. Yeah. Thank you for getting involved with that. Right, Sam, it's the closing tradition on the podcast. For some reason, the first season, I put in a feature where my mum asks a question of every guest, and that has now lasted for every episode. We're like nearly 30 episodes in now. So my mum leaves a voice note. I play it down the mic, and I don't listen to the voice note. So she knows roughly who I'm speaking to, and I can only apologise in advance for the question because it could go any which way. I'll try and make sure the volume's up.
Hi, Sam. As your success continues to grow as an actor, what legacy would you like to leave the world? Thank you.
God, I tell you what, Sam, they're never usually that deep. It's quite a deep question. So Lisa is my mum's name.
Lisa. I think my response to Lisa would be, I know that there are certain films or TV shows that like impart a feeling to me that's inspired me or like, you know, motivated me creatively, or just to do something that people find something useful in.
Yeah.
You know, like I did with like Boys in the Boat, is this very inspirational story about like sort of no matter what the odds are, they can be overcome. And I'm not sentimental like that, but I'm proud that I got to do a movie that if there's like some kid at school that it finds some grit through like watching these guys like against all odds prevail, I'm like, I'm really glad that I got to be a part of that.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's great. It's a great answer. And I think it's, I think legacy and getting hooked on legacy, which I've done in the past, I think about, especially now I've got 2 kids, I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I think about the legacy I'm going to leave to them. And it just does add a layer of pressure thinking about what you're going to leave behind. But I think, yeah, the way you term that, Sam, is really lovely. And it's great. Like, also getting an opportunity to work on a film like that, I can imagine was just crazy with the cast and the director, obviously, you know, amazing. Yeah.
That was the craziest experience ever.
Nice. Sam, thank you so much. I really appreciate you investing so much time in this as well. Yeah. It's been really lovely getting to know you as well. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You too, man. Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Jobsworth. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to give us a follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, if you could take 2 seconds to rate the show, that would be awesome. You can follow Jobsworth on Instagram, where you'll get teasers for upcoming episodes, some behind the scenes videos and the occasional bit of career inspiration. And if you'd like to learn more about my day job, then feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.